guys, it is Tanya and welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you are new here. Today I'm going to be going over roofing in The Sims 4, particularly covering different manipulation points, textures, and just overall tips and tricks on placing roofs on your house and figuring out the best roof shape for things you're building in the game. Before we get started, I just wanted to say that by no means am I an expert at roofing in the game. I'm just going to share my tips and tricks that I've been using when I'm building my houses because I've gotten an overwhelming amount of suggestions to make a roofing tutorial. And also, I might not cover absolutely everything in this tutorial. I'm just going to go over the basics and a couple of tips and tricks here and there, but let's get started. So there are quite a few different types of roofs in the game. We have gabled roofs, hipped roofs, half gabled roofs, half hipped roofs, hexagonal roofs, octagonal roofs, pentagonal roofs, circular roofs, and then we have the gabled, half hipped, and hipped roofs in diagonal form. You'll probably use all of these roof types at some point in time. However, the ones I use the most often are probably the gabled roofs and the half gabled roofs. I do occasionally use some of the others, and of course if you're building on a diagonal you're going to want to use those. But I think the best way to go over some of the basics of the roofing is to build a structure. I'm going to do something really simple. So I'm going to just quickly build a little structure here. I don't want to make it crazy complicated, but let's just say this is our house. Let's make a nice little bump out on the side perhaps. And do we want a second floor? Yeah, let's go for a second floor. That way I can kind of show you how I might approach that. I don't want to make this a complicated house. I feel like also whenever I make tutorial houses, I make them look very similar to each other, and I don't know why I do that. Okay, so maybe something like that. I'm also going to add like a little chimney thing here. Yeah. I mean, I'll add a couple of doors and stuff so you can kind of understand the vision I have with this. Okay, I think this works for a pretty basic structure. So usually what I do when I'm building a house and I'm going to place the roof on is I try and define what the biggest square or rectangle is, which right now is this direction. And since this house isn't very strongly one way horizontal or vertical, I would probably grab the gabled roof, which I normally would grab anyway, but if it was a very horizontal house, I would definitely put the roof this way. Also, I'm rotating the roof like this by pressing the period or full stop key on my keyboard. You can also press the comma key. You can rotate back and forth that way. Anyway, once you place down the roof, you can use these arrows on the sides to drag it to the distance you want and then drag it forward. So I'm going to cover that big rectangle that I had mentioned before. This little button right here allows you to go ahead and copy the roof and you can place it back down. So that'll keep it at the exact same pitch you had before, which I'll go over those tools in a moment. And so I'm just going to place that there. I do want to show off those tools. So actually we're going to make this a different pitch and then we'll copy that again. So if you'd like to change the altitude of this roof, you can go ahead and manipulate it through this point at the top of the roof. Additionally, if you hold down Alt while you're doing that, you can do it way more precisely. It no longer snaps to the grid. So this is without Alt, it's kind of snapping to certain points. You can only go like that, but with Alt, you can move it way smoother. Another thing that you can do with roofs is we have these little manipulation points on the end. If you drag these inward, it makes the eaves go inward, and then if you drag them out, you can make them as long as you want. There's all these different points. You can't alter these so that they're not snapping to specific points. However, you can alter them individually. If you hold down Shift while you're dragging these, it'll only alter one of the sides. So you can see I'm just manipulating this side independently from the other. This works also on the front and back of these roofs. So you can make some funny things. I mean, this doesn't really look good for that. And I'm just pressing Control Z to get back to where we had started. So I think that's pretty basic for how you would go ahead and move the roof around. But you may have seen some people make more complicated roof shapes, and that has to do with this little circle right here, which just clicking it, it was like, whoa. But basically you can drag this around to kind of make different roof shapes like this. However, sometimes there are more points than that, and you can access that by doing Shift C on your keyboard, and now you have 3 points, one at the bottom, one in the middle, and one at the top. So you can maybe make it a little bit more pointy at the top, it rounds inward, and then at the bottom it rounds back up. You can definitely manipulate these points in all kinds of ways to make all kinds of really fun roof shapes. So combining all of those different techniques, you can make some fun stuff, which I think is really, really cool. So I'm actually going to go back to a pretty basic roof shape because I don't think that fits this house. And then if you click right here on roof patterns, you can actually go ahead and change the texture of the roof to whatever you want. Most of these have a bunch of swatches, so you can really choose from a lot. I wish we had more, but there are quite a few options in here. A couple of people had asked me, how do you get glass roofs? It's literally a texture on the roof here. They added it in an update last year, so you might have missed it. But these are super handy. You just click on it and voila, you have a glass roof. Of course, maybe it might not be the best idea for the whole roof to be glass like that, but you could do it in sections. So if you just moved this over into a small section, and then maybe we duplicate the roof, put it next to it, and you can make that a regular roof tile. You can kind of make skylights that way. There's a lot of different messing around with roofs you can do, but that's just one way you can go ahead and approach that. So now you have some beautiful light going into your home. Another important thing to have with roofs is your roof trim, which you can access on the menu right here. In here, you have a bunch of different trims that you can place on your roofs to make them pop out and look a little bit more finished. So you can see me placing these right now. There's lots of different colors on all of them, as well as thicknesses depending on your choice. So this one's kind of a more standard one. There's this huge cartoony one, which I think is really, really cool, and it fits for some fun builds. We're gonna ignore that now and bring these roofs back, or at least this one back to what I would probably roof this as. And we're gonna go ahead and duplicate it and finish roofing this house so I can show you how I would go about doing that. So I would probably make this one the same pitch and kind of make it to that size. I might grab another one of these, or maybe not. I think actually one of these rare occasions, I'm gonna use a half-hipped roof over on this section of the house and drag it over like that. And then I'm gonna drag out the eaves so that it stretches out just a little bit and lower it down using the Alt key. Because I think that looks a little bit nicer. And then we're gonna go ahead and copy that roof texture over. And of course, the roof trim as well. So I had imagined that this is a chimney, and I like to do that just by faking it with 2 wide blocks. We do have chimney objects. I just prefer the way this looks usually. So I usually have a block or like 1 or 2 levels of just 2 by 1 squares. And then on the top level, I will use a half wall to kind of complete that look. I mean, this is by no means the most pretty house I've done. This is just something quick I'm doing to show you guys kind of my process. I think I'm gonna actually drag this out across here. This is going to be a porch. And if you click on this button in the middle, you can raise up the foundation of your house. And with that, I think I'm going to place another roof up here. We're going to grab one of these half-hipped roofs. I'm actually going to turn on the move objects sheet, bb.moveObjects space on, so that none of the windows disappear. And then if we just drag this down, I'm going to actually drag in all the eaves on this. I much prefer that. And drag this across. We're kind of starting to create a bit of a covered balcony area on this house. I think I'm going to do the same thing in the back here, making a porch area around this bump out on the top. And then we can go ahead and place another one of those roofs, which I'm just going to duplicate from the back of the house and place here. I'm also going to duplicate the roof from the front of the house and place it on the back and size it down to the correct size of this little bump out. And obviously this house is missing a bunch of like columns and fences and stuff, but this is probably how I would approach the roof of just this simple shaped house. So you're working on furnishing the house and you decide it would be a really cool idea to have a staircase that has a larger area around it so you can kind of view downstairs from this in a larger space than it already gives you. So you create this, awesome. But then you're like, oh, I kind of want to section off this room here. And now the roofs are coming into the house and it's a mess and you're just like, what do I do? All right, so that was something that I've dealt with a bunch of times and I got a bunch of questions about it. It really depends on the situation and if it's even fixable, because there are some roof types that are just glitchy. However, with this particular scenario, I would go ahead and just drag this roof back out. However, as you can see, the roof trim is clipping through the house. That is because of the roof trim we picked. If you click this one on the end here, nope, it's not coming through the house and it still looks good. It's that It's like the thicker ones, and this size as well comes through the roof. But as you can see here, we're having that same problem with it coming through the room, as well as the trim sticking through in this portion. So I'm gonna go ahead and swap it out for this roof trim. And then I'm gonna go ahead and bring this over so it only fills out that space. I'm then gonna duplicate it and place it over here and extend it so it only comes out to outside, and then connect them in the middle. They don't seamlessly go together right there, but they're pretty close, and then you don't have the problem inside anymore. And you can continue to make rooms up here that border this area. Next, I wanna go over some roofing that can be done for more barn style roofs. This is very common in Brindleton Bay, which is based off of New England, which is where I'm from, so I'm very familiar with this style of house. What you're gonna want is to have a room on the bottom floor and then one directly on top of it that does not extend the full width of the one below it. Something like this. I might actually extend this out a little bit more. Yeah, we're gonna do it like this. So then you have this shape. What you're gonna go ahead and do at this point is you're gonna place a roof on top and extend it out to the distance of the room, extend that out. And I'm gonna actually move these pieces inward. Next, you're gonna grab a half gabled roof and place it over on the sides of this building. You're gonna extend these ones inward again, and you're gonna make it go up by extending this upward while holding the Alt key until you can get these to match up the best you can. And there we go. So then if you extend this to the end there, that's pretty seamless. I'm actually gonna lower this a little bit more to make it more barn-esque. And then if you just grab this, click the duplicate key, rotate it using your full stop or period key, and there you go. You have kind of a barn-shaped roof here, and the floors are fully accessible. So what about modern roofing? I've just placed down a house that I built a year or so ago. I think it was sometime last year. And this just shows off a way that you could roof a modern house. There's a lot of different ways to do it. But in this particular case, this is just a piece of flooring that I've placed down, put some tiles on it, and then I went and grabbed a exterior trim and placed it along the edges of the build to kind of give it a little bit more shape. And then these are just a couple of roofs I placed down and put some little windows on it just so the roof was not so flat. That is definitely an option. I'm gonna actually go ahead and delete, oh my goodness, floating windows. I'm gonna delete all of this and show you another way that I sometimes do roof modern houses, actually quite often, which is using a short half wall and kind of tracing out the shape of the top of the house like so. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish that off, and then in this section right here you can pick any of these trims and change the color. So I'm gonna grab a black one, and so that paints that. Of course I would have to paint up here so it's not bland, and you can either leave it like that so there's this little gap so it's like a little wall, or you can fill this in. The item I typically use to fill it in, which you might have seen me do this in builds before, is from Get to Work. It's this little table right here that totes modern pedestal in black usually, and I just place a bunch of them down because it's almost flush with the top of the half wall here, so then it kind of will, once that's filled in, give the effect of a flat roof up here. Also, I'm placing these down consecutively like this by holding down Shift. If you hold down Shift while you're placing an item, it will automatically repopulate the item so you can place it down again, which makes things a whole lot easier when you're placing items. That's really helpful with landscaping as well. So that's definitely one way that I address modern roofs, as well as I had shown before that you can just place sections of roofs to add a little bit of shape. That is a tree. A little bit of shape, and you just kind of got to be experimental with it, because modern homes, I feel like there's no wrong answer, but those are just some of the ways that I address roofing a modern house. Anyway, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to cover in this tutorial. I know it was pretty bare bones, basic, and it's really trial and error with roofs, but I think knowing what the tools do is very helpful, and knowing some options you have and like little tricks like these little tables. I love using these. There are other items you can use as well, but they're my favorite for lining the tops of roofs. Of course, you're gonna want to do it all the way across so you don't see this under here. But anyway, I hope you guys did find this helpful. If you have any additional roofing questions, feel free to leave those down below. If you have a very specific one to your build, I might not be able to help you, but if you have a general question of something I might have missed in this tutorial that you'd like answered, please leave those down below. And also any questions you guys might have about landscaping, because that's the next tutorial on my list. But yeah, if you liked this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. You can also subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and if you click that little bell, it'll turn on notifications so you'll be notified of every single time I upload a new video. Also, if you found this helpful and you think other people would too, please make sure to share this with your friends. And I think that's pretty much it. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all soon. Bye, everybody.